Hello friends! Blend modes in Procreate can be confusing to understand, really technical, and a bit intimidating. So rather than combing through the technical details of how they work, we're going to explore how different blend modes can change the way your art looks. In this video, we're going to take a look at how we can use blend modes to add shadows to an illustration. In a nutshell, blend modes are effects that determine how two or more layers interact. So this drawing is going to be my base layer, and I'm going to create a new layer right above it, and this will be my blend layer. When you add a blend mode to this top layer, you can manipulate the look of your drawing without making any changes to the base layer. So blend modes are a non-destructive way to alter your artwork. At the time of this recording, I'm using Procreate version 5.4, and the blend modes cover 5 basic categories. I will test each category in a separate video. First, let's take a look at the Darken category, which includes Multiply, Darken, Shade, Color Burn, Linear Burn, and Darker Color. Basically, all the blend modes right above the normal mode. So I'm going to add shading to these flowers and leaves using each of the Darken blend modes to see how they affect the artwork. Before we continue, I'd love if you'd like, comment, subscribe, and watch till the very end because it really helps the channel. Okay, so I've got my art on a base layer, and the layer above it is what I'll be using for the blend layer. The first blend mode we're going to try is Multiply. Whatever I do on this blend layer will affect the look of the artwork on the layer below. So for example, if I add a line of color, you can see that the colors on the artwork below get darker wherever the stripe intersects. The lavender I used for the stripe is the same color I used for these petals. And as you can see, rather than just blending into the petal, it actually deepens the color. The lavender stripe makes the colors on the pink and the orange flowers slightly deeper as well, but it also shifts those colors slightly because the lavender is kind of tinting these colors. If I change the color of the stripe to this pale green, you can see the difference in the tint more clearly. So I think to darken and add shadows to the flowers, the lavender color would probably work best. Then for the shadows on the leaves, the pale green would probably be a better choice than the lavender because it creates a nice shift in color for all these different shades of green. Now I think when you're using Multiply, using lighter or mid-tone colors seems to work best. For example, if I used a dark color, it can get really intense, and depending on where you use it, it can shift the color on the base layer pretty drastically. Okay, now I'm going to actually add the shadows. So I'm going to hide that layer for now, create a new layer right above the base layer, and set it to Multiply as well. And I'm going to use this as my blend layer for the shadows. I'm just going to darken the color along the edge of each of these petals. Now the trick is the marks you make on the blend layer will not be confined to the flower shape on the layer below. So in order to hide these areas, I'm going to have to use a clipping mask. By the way, if you're not familiar with clipping masks, you can watch this video. Now it's much easier to draw those shadows right up to the edge without worrying about that color showing up outside the petal shape. Okay, so I've done all of the shadows on the petals with the same light lavender color. And now I'm going to switch to that light bluish green and add all of the shading to the leaves. This is such a quick and easy way to add some shadow details to a piece without having to swap out colors constantly. So even though all of these leaves are different greens, my shadow colors will adjust to whatever color is used on the base layer. And the other wonderful thing about doing all of this on a blend layer is, again, it's non-destructive. So if you make a mistake or you overcolor a certain area, you can just erase and make changes on the blend layer without affecting the artwork below. Now this artwork has a flat look to it, and I'm using a pretty flat ink brush, but you can also use a grainy or textured brush if you prefer. And again, you can simply turn off the blend layer whenever you want to revert back to your original art. Now let's see how the other darkening modes look. I'm going to turn back on the blend layer with the stripes. Then I'm going to change that blend mode to darken, which is next on the list. Now with this mode, the colors don't interact as much. The lavender stripe didn't shift the color on the petals, it just kind of blends into the petals. And if you look really closely, I don't even know if you can see it on camera, but there's the tiniest shift in color on the orange petal and the pink petal, but it's almost not even noticeable. You can see a bit more of the shift with the green stripe, how it's affected the orange color on this petal. But that green is not affecting any of the darker areas at all. And here, all you can see is the dark green stripe. It kind of takes over everything else. Now, if I go to the shadow layer and I change that blend mode to darken, you can see that none of those shadows show up. So it looks like the darken blend mode is not ideal for adding shadows in this way. Now let's try the next on the list. So I'm going to turn back on the stripes layer and change the blend mode to shade, and nothing happened. Let's test it on the shadow layer. Yeah, same thing. So darken and shade seem to be pretty much doing the same thing, which in this case is nothing. So let's move on to color burn. So I'm going to go back to the stripes layer, change that to color burn. So the first obvious change is you don't see the stripes on any of the white areas. And even when it shows up on the areas with color, it's pretty subtle. You can see a slight darkening here where the lavender stripe overlaps this pink flower. And same here with the orange. This is where the lavender stripe is. This is the original orange color. Now here's where the light green stripe is, and you can see a slight difference. This is where the stripe is, and this is the original green. And here with the darker blue, this is where the stripe is. This is the original color. So very, very subtle. But now down here where I drew the dark green stripe, the shift is way more dramatic. So that dark color is creating a super vibrant, contrasty shift in color. Okay, let's go to the layer where I created the shadows and change the blending mode to color burn there as well. Now, since I used mid-tone colors for all of these shadows on this layer, again, it's super subtle. You're only seeing a very slight shift in color where all of those shadows are showing up. Now, if I create a new shadow layer and I change the color to a bright blue, now that makes a difference. Those shadows get way more vibrant and intense. So with the multiply blend mode, we saw that light to mid-tone colors worked best for shadows, but with color burn, it looks like darker or more vibrant colors will give you lots of fun and unexpected results. Okay, I'm going to go back to the stripes layer, and this time we're going to try linear burn. Okay, this one seems to be kind of somewhere between multiply and color burn. So we can see the entire length of the stripes. Nothing gets lost against the white background. The color interaction on these mid-tone stripes is very similar, but here it's more vibrant than when we were using multiply. And with the dark stripe, the color shift is very dark and pretty intense. Now when I turn on the shading layer and change that to linear burn, it's a very similar result to what we got when we used multiply. It's just a bit more vibrant. Okay, the last blend mode in the darken category is called darker color. So let's give that a try. Okay, these results look almost identical to the darken and shade modes, except there's no color interaction on the orange petals at all. So it looks like with this mode, wherever the darker color is, that's what's going to be prominent. And the lighter colors kind of are pushed to the background. Let's change the shading layer to darker color. And this is the layer where I did the shading in the mid-tone colors, and really nothing's happening here. It doesn't look like there's any shading at all. And when I turn on the shading layer where I use the bright blue and I switch that to darker color, all you see is the bright blue. It's not interacting with the colors on the base layer at all. So if you want to try using blend modes to add shadows to your artwork, it looks like multiply and linear burn will give you the most straightforward result, and you can do some really fun things with color burn if you're willing to experiment. I really hope you found this helpful. For more Procreate tips and tricks, there's a link to a playlist in the description. And if you enjoyed this video, remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.